Hello everyone, today I am looking at The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. So, this is an interesting game, and it's also interesting how I've interacted with it. Simply because I did not play this game when it came out. Well, actually I did play a little bit of it at like rented it or whatever, and I really didn't like it at the time. And so all these years later, I had played Skyrim. I'd already done all the other things. I'd actually played Morrowind just before this to get caught up. And so I started, hey, I never actually beat Oblivion, so I'm going to go back into it and see what it's like. And I don't like it. I just don't like Oblivion. I really, I prefer Morrowind over Oblivion, and it's really weird, and I just have to, come clean with how I feel about it. It's a weird thing. If I had to rank, each game, I would say I would almost rate Morrowind my favorite, simply because I really love good story and good music, and Morrowind has that. And then very closely with that is Skyrim, because it's freaking Skyrim, right? The world itself is just amazing. And so it's interesting here in Oblivion, why don't I really like this game? I mean, it laid out all the fundamentals for a Skyrim to come about, but it just feels, I don't know, there's just something about the game that feels, kind of janky. Well, I mean, it's a Bethesda game, of course, but I don't know, it's the loading screens, it's the fact that when you select your things, I mean, it's all very fluid, but I don't like the interface. I don't like the UI. I don't like how everything is like trying to look like parchment paper. The combat is, it's obviously better than Morrowind, that's for sure. But, now you have, it just feels very, I don't know, generic. The interface has a lot to do with that. The main story itself is fairly interesting, but again, this is where, you start to get more into the world. It's the world that's really the main character of these games. And with Skyrim, of course, the main quest is like, who actually freaking cares? So, yeah, I don't know. It's like, this one is more sort of straightforward, where you have to basically, save the Emperor, or, I mean, so the way this game, I guess I'll get into the story. The way it opens up is that, you have to save Uriel Septim, who is the Emperor, and, you basically are, again, all these games start with you basically in jail or some kind of traitor or something, and you make your character, and you basically break out of jail as he's escaping, and there are assassins after the Emperor. And so rather than in Morrowind, when you were in the, Vardenfell, you are now in the main capital of Cyrodiil, in the heart of the Empire, which I find a little bit comical, honestly, because the main city of the entire Empire is about as big as, like a main city in Vardenfell or in Skyrim even. Like, it's about the size and breadth of a Whiterun, or more so I forget. But the size of the main capital, like, the main capital of the whole empire, I was like, oh, this is it? I was like, okay, whatever. So anyway, Uriel Septim, he is escaping his, like, assassins. You try to help him, and there's some prophecy like, oh, you're the one foretold by prophecy. And so he gets assassinated. You take his last wish and his command, because he gets separated from his guards, to this other guy from the Blades. The Blade says, oh, you have to go to this priory, or this small church, to Brother Martin. And it turns out Brother Martin is actually a descendant of Uriel and his kind of illegitimate son. And so he's the true heir. And so from there, after you secure Martin and his his safety, you essentially then go on a series of quests to prepare for, an attack against the Daedra and defeat the oncoming onslaught. So there is one thing I will say about this game that is very, very, very cool and very iconic to the Oblivion aesthetic, that makes it different from every other fantasy game and other games in the series, is that what is happening in this age in the Elder Scrolls lore and universe is that the Daedra, this race of extra dimensional beings, literally like demons out of hell, are essentially invading the fantasy world of Cyrodiil. And I actually like this a lot. I think it's really cool. The aesthetic of the demons is very cool. The demon world is super, super cool. And oh god, and the level design and the art direction in the last like few levels is amazing. I'm such a sucker for high dichotomy, where you have like the forces of light against the forces of evil and the forces of hell versus heaven and all that, kind of good stuff. I don't know why. I'm like Metroid Prime 2, like light and dark. I don't know why. I just love that theme. But yeah, so essentially you have very early on in the game, there are temples of little demons coming through. So it's different where in other games in this series, you are essentially fighting against like a rogue faction or a fanatical faction or, other beings essentially of the realm. But it's interesting. It's really interesting in this one where you're fighting as an Imperial in the Empire, where essentially your main antagonist is a non race of the Elder Scrolls universe. It'd be interesting if in the next Elder Scrolls game they let you play as a Daedra from the beginning. It might break lore reasons or whatever, but I think it's pretty cool and very interesting. It's also very funny that I got very far into this game and also even Skyrim. It's only a side quest, really, that I didn't even know what the Elder Scrolls were. And so, at least to my understanding, they are scrolls literally left by the gods themselves that if you look on them, you will either go insane or something else. And essentially, they are these scrolls that give you prophecy and allow you to know the future and the entire all the knowledge of the universe, past, present, and futures in these scrolls. And it's kind of like the in-game reason why, the player character can reload and, save a million times, is because, the scrolls essentially have foretold it, and the scrolls are like, the game's code or something. I'm sure it's something like that they devised. But yeah. But again, yeah, the Daedra, they have like these cities in hell, and they have these portals you go into, and so one of the first towns you come into contact with, they invade, you go in there, you destroy the portal, and you come back, and everyone's like, oh my god, how did he do it? How did he destroy and close the portal? He must be the chosen one. And so basically, the only way that, you can destroy these portals is going inside them, finding the source, and then exiting. And so you basically, become the chosen one and begin your campaign to save the realm and also to bring the Septim Dynasty back into control of the world and banish the demons. So it's this cool thing where all the races of Tamriel are essentially combining and fighting together against this non-Tamriel race in order to, save their land essentially. And there is essentially a main Daedra who is coordinating this entire assault on the human world. And so he's kind of revealed his identity at the end of the game. But it's just interesting that you hear how the Daedra act as different characters in each of these games. For example, you have Ashura, who kind of has a main role in Morrowind, and you have another one in this game, and you hear those names and terms in Skyrim and side quests, like, oh, there's still a cult to Magoth Ball and Dagoth and all these other things, and you're like, oh, I know who that is. And so I really enjoy that, how this is just proper fantasy lore where you have a good idea and you basically just have it in the world, and that's just how it is. Like, even when these gods are defeated or no one believes them anymore, or they're like renegade, are trying to be thrown away or dismantled, they still exist in the universe. And I just think that's just so cool and a nice thing that, you build a reputation for, oh, this is going to be, they of course have the reputation for, this is the Thieves Guild's quest line. This is the Black Hand. I forgot their name. the Brotherhood of Shadows. The Hand of Shadow. I honestly forget their name. I'm sorry. And you always know how those quest lines turn out because they're always the same, and because the game developers don't need to basically reinvent the wheel. They're fine with essentially doing that. Of course, this is where the iconic Bethesda style speaking begins, where the camera stops and zooms in on the guy's face in a kind of in a stilted way. There was something about that the guy who does all the facial animations and that kind of animation work for Bethesda was like an old friend of Todd, who basically like was his buddy, and he was kind of like begging for a job. Maybe that's why it's so awful. I mean, it's not the worst, but it's it's distinct, let's say. But yeah, so that's kind of the lore and the setup to this game. And also this game has a great ending because it's a perfect cliffhanger to Skyrim, with the prophecy that once the Emperor is able to defeat and drive back this demon in this time, the dragons will return. And the hype around the dragons returning, I can definitely feel it when Skyrim launched. And it's different story, but yeah. The gameplay in Oblivion, it's pretty standard. Again, this is when they're kind of branching into creating an open world and what that looks like. I just don't like the interface. It's very jumbled, it's very messy. It's trying to be like an in-game thing. Like all the in-game interfaces in Morrowind kind of look like parchment, but they actually functioned as proper screens. Something else is the world itself isn't very interesting, even topographically. Like you have places of hills and countryside and whatnot. You can get a horse in this game, which is a cool thing. Once you get a horse, it does open up a lot of the world because it has a lot of stamina. It can go very, very far. It's very cool. But yeah, the world itself is just not engaging enough for me to really get into it. Like, at least in Skyrim, each of the dungeons have like a certain style to them, in the Nordic burial mound kind of way. And, eventually you get bored of that. But here, really, all of the dungeons feel so samey. It feels like a dungeon-style dungeon. It doesn't feel like it's trying to be a temple or like a little special thing or something. And, yeah, I like the idea of Oblivion, I guess, more than the actual game itself. So, yeah. I mean, that's just how it is. Some other fun facts I know about Oblivion: this is the game where also introduced purchasable horse armor, which is considered to be the first microtransaction ever in like 2005. And so, this is where it all began, right? The one thing, of course, that does, I think, save Oblivion, that's even a term, is that is mods. And this is really the beginning of the mod community and mods as we know them. I think Oblivion is one of the most modded games of all time. And it's amazing to see all the crazy stuff people have made for this game and how cool it is and how that community was built around this game. And honestly, good for Bethesda for not stopping that, because I know some developers like Nintendo would not tolerate that at all. It's like, oh, you touched our product, you're in the court now, kind of thing. So, this game's community is really great, and the game's story is pretty good as well. But the game itself, I didn't really have fun playing it. It just has a lot of that bloom. Maybe everything's just, I don't know, it just looks kind of eh. I even prefer Morrowind. Morrowind had better atmosphere. I don't know. I do not enjoy this game on a fundamental level. Like, it's fine, it's playable, but I'd rather play Morrowind or Skyrim over this one. And it's just, I guess, a taste thing, honestly, because I can't even express why that is. It's just cuz. Again, though, I really love the aesthetic of the the demon world. And in the end, you have, these scenes of paradise and like this whole thing where the god, the the Daedra is like taunting you, saying it's futile, stop, there's no point. And then, the game ends with this final battle in the capital city, which is actually really cool. I'd never seen anything like it, or even depicted in art or lore or anything. But the ending to Oblivion is really, really cool. And again, like I said, it sets it up very appropriately for Skyrim in certain ways. I feel like a lot of people like this game when it came out at the time. It's like, oh, you can do a bunch of different dungeons. You can find, like all these cool weapons and everything. I just feel like everything that Oblivion did, Skyrim did better for its world. The only thing that Oblivion has to separate itself is its story, which is better, and also, I'm not sure, to be honest with you. But, yeah. Again, there was a few cool side stories. There's a side quest where I was doing the assassination side quests, and there's this one. The one that really stands out to me is that there's this one mansion in the seedier part of the countryside where basically it's literally a whodunit mystery murder case, but you're the murderer. And so I replayed that and reloaded that quite a few times just to see all the different combinations I could get by killing so-and-so. And of course, there's little booby traps inside the house itself, so you can like make it look like, oh, it's not me. That was actually probably one of my favorite quests in the whole game. It was a lot of fun. I also found it very interesting that the Blades that guard the Emperor, this secret organization, basically always use katanas. I just find that super kind of weeby or interesting. I feel like I might go back to Oblivion, maybe install some mods to make the game just honestly faster to play, and kind of see if there's any decent side quests to do. But yeah, the game itself, it's like, it's fine, it's serviceable, but again, Skyrim just does it better, and it's just missing the story. So I would come to Oblivion for the story, which again is not bad, it's pretty good. Anyway guys, that's the game. Take care, see you later, bye.